the direction is how do I differentiate on value and how do we incentivize our operators to differentiate on value, right? Because that ultimately creates so much value then for the customers. The reason you book an experience is not because it's cheaper. The cheapest way to book an activity is to not book an activity.
Tao Tao, welcome back to the Tourpreneur podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Second time visitor. Not many people get that.
Let's improve every time.
It's 9 months later, and the first thing we're going to do is say cheers to a great day, a great conference.
Cheers. Thanks for coming.
Cheers. Thanks for it. Great.
So this is a conference that you put on for your partners. You don't have to do it. Why are you doing it? Why are you inviting hundreds of your partners from around the world to come and meet you?
So I think the answer is in your question, which is partnership. And for us, partnership is about, setting expectation, being transparent, hearing feedback. So we have really two goals with our long conference. One is we want to give our partners a preview of what is to come. So here are the things that you can do to be more successful. Here are the things that are coming so you can get ready. And the other part, and that's very, very important, is to get feedback. I love the one-on-one conversations. I love the panel questions, the constructive challenges. That is how we get better. A year ago, doing one of our unlocks, we got a lot of feedback on, curating the marketplace, and we took action. So we invested massively into better curating our marketplace. And it was at times uncomfortable, but great partnerships is not always lovey-dovey, but you need the tough love to grow together. And that's why we have Unlocked.
You're in the tough love business. I think the thing that impressed me the most at this conference, and I have to say out of everything, you had a corner over there with somebody staffed all day long with the heading support desk. They just sat there and they were ready for all and any questions.
Yes.
You didn't have to host this conference, and this conference could have been a bunch of PR in which you just touted your features and said, all right, now leave. But no, it was real. You had real people showing up to answer real questions and to engage with that tough love.
Well, first of all, thank you for noticing it. Really appreciate that. But we do care, right? Also it's efficient, right? We're a German company at our heart. And if people are here and we can, help them on the spot, awesome.
Probably the most interesting thing I heard tonight or today was about 5 minutes ago when I was walking through there, just coming from one interview, rushing to another interview. You were on stage and I heard something about moods. Yeah. What mood are you in? And it probably my ears perked up straight away because it got away from the technical, physical optimization. You're talking about design, or you were suggesting, could we design tours around people's moods?
Yeah.
And that really slapped me in the face there. That was like, hey, I want to hear about that stuff.
Look, Pete, I felt the same way because this is exactly what I meant with people coming with suggestions. I was having a meeting earlier with one of our operators, and he was saying, well, we can either compete on cost. I'd rather much compete on value and help us differentiate. And here's an idea how we can differentiate. On some of our tours, they're more relaxed. Some of them are just like 1 hour, go through it. Some of them, maybe people are more interested in the history. So you get someone with a historic guide. I love that idea because that is exactly how we can help operators differentiate, but we have to enable that. So in the way we surface information, the information infrastructure, architecture, we have to make that possible. So we will take that idea. It's one of the ideas to our teams. That is the team that's working on guided experiences, right? So that problem is very different for shows and events. It's very different. That's more seat maps. On multi-day tours, it's much more like which hotel or what's the luxury level of the hotel. So I think the general direction is how can we help our operators in different categories really shine and stand out on the things that matter. And on the specific ideas, we're very open for ideas like the moods one that I heard earlier.
So let's begin back at the beginning in January. We had a great conversation, but really the word of the day was curated. And in some ways, it still is the word because it's been a year-long project that has ruffled feathers, developed your idea of what it means to be a global marketplace of supply. There's a lot going on in that word. 9 months later, where are you at with this idea of becoming or deepening your understanding of being a curated marketplace?
So I would say we're on step 3 of a multi-year journey.
How many steps are there?
Could be 5.
49 steps.
Exactly. The 49 steps of curation. Look, just like in politics, if some people think you curate too much and some people say you don't curate enough, that's when you're roughly in the right balance. So we're definitely getting the feedback that we're too restrictive on one hand. And, today we heard that we're not restrictive enough. And this is exactly these conversations to have, the nuances of, how many similar activities, what constitutes a similar activity. The teams are working through, we have a catalog of 100 different cases of how we think to regulate different types of behaviors and activities. I would say we're on the journey. It's a journey we're proud to be on because it's definitely the right direction. We're also getting good customer feedback because we can proudly stand behind every activity on the platform. So that's ultimately in the customer game of trust. Very, very important. So yeah, early days, but strong start, I would say.
Let me ask you this, though. Is there a tension in the announcement of curation as a very manual process of a lot of review, a lot of looking at all their tours, and the announcement today of AI filters becoming essentially a personalized, I wouldn't call it a feed, but at least listing rankings that rely on your body of inventory and the customer's needs? Is curation as important at this moment?
More than ever. The way I really look at it is in the world of AI, the cost of fraud goes to almost zero, and the value of curation and trust and quality goes up even more. And especially and you know this, and your listeners know this, in a service industry. We don't deal in haptic products where you can compare and send back if it's bad. This is about people and families' time. Like, you really have to get this right. And there will always be a human in the loop because somebody needs to create the guidelines, right? So in the world of AI, somebody needs to write the objective function of what we're optimizing for. And we're optimizing ultimately for quality. And there's always going to be some human involvement in making that judgment call. Where AI can help is to make that scalable, right? Because we have thousands of new activities coming onto the platform or trying to come on the platform every week. And so that judgment call is not scalable with humans. And what we always tell our teams is our goal is a very ambitious goal because we want to be comprehensive and curated. Because you can easily just be comprehensive, which is like everything goes, throw it against the wall, see what sticks, right? And this works in classifieds, right? Whatever, right? No harm. You can be fully curated, right? Like a luxury store, handpicked. Also doesn't work because who are we to tell? Because this is important. Who we are to tell what is a cool experience. If you had asked me 5 years ago, is a knife making workshop something that people want? Maybe, maybe not, right? But I loved it when I did it in Japan. And so that's why I think we have to thread that needle of comprehensive and curated at scale with human judgment and AI to help scale those guidelines. Look, I'm not saying we get it right. And that's why, so a couple of things we're going to be more concrete. A couple of things we'll improve for next year is one is we will improve the SLAs, so the response times. I recognize, and this is a feedback that we took to heart, it just took too long for folks waiting on the wait list, right? Sometimes for a month. And we recognize that, and we apologize for that, and we will improve that. So shortening the response times, that's number one. And number two is improving the processes for appeals, right? Because the AI will get it wrong. And so how do you have a process of appeals that isn't some kind of, bureaucratic death loop where nobody will answer? And so we're working on appeals and the response times.
So as our listeners will know, I never ever sit on the fence. I jump to one side or the other. And I'm firmly in the more curated camp. I want more curation from not just your marketplace, by all marketplaces. Yeah. And my driving reason for this, and I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, I believe the more curated a marketplace, the more innovation it drives in designing tours. Because if a tour operator looks at a marketplace, it's easy to just do something same or very similar to what's there, and they think they're going to get a lot of business. Whereas if it has to be curated, it's going to push back and make that operator design and think of something different. And if we're going to service all of these millions and millions of new customers that are coming into the travel and the experiences industry, I don't think they want to do the type of experiences I did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. They're going to need a constant flow of new things.
So Peter, I don't disagree with you, right? And I fully agree that the innovation should come through new types of experiences, right? So if you have a walking tour that does ABC, it doesn't make a ton of sense to just create the same thing. And that's actually what curation for us will address, right? Which is we don't want, the 50 of the same tour. So that's part of our curation efforts. At the same time, if you're the only person, let's say you have a great whiskey tour and it's killing it. Yeah, I know I'm catering to the preaching to convert. Exactly. Preaching to convert.
Not chopstick making?
Not chopstick making whiskey tour. So if you do a whiskey tour and it's working super well, and if let's say we were not to allow another whiskey tour because we said, no, we already have a whiskey tour. You create a beer tour, a Guinness tour or something. The problem of that is you will get complacent, right? So you need competition. You need, I very much believe in healthy competition, not the one that, doesn't make you sleep at night, but there's some healthy competition. And look, when we started Get Your Guide, the landscape was very different, right? You've been in this industry for a very, very long time. The quality standards were very different. The competition is good ultimately for the marketplace because it forces people to think about value, about quality, better guides, better training, right? And all these things. So there needs to be a bit of competition, but we shouldn't have 100 whiskey tours, right? And so, but that's what I mean with threading that needle and that balance. And I don't think we'll get it right immediately, but we're continuously improve based on feedback.
Is the most apt metaphor right now Game of Thrones? Are we a bunch of kingdoms all jarring against each other, for each other, making alliances, when in fact there's a giant wall that's about to crumble, which is called AI mode, and there's a complete revolution happening in the potential for what discovery means in the future? And it means a radical transformation of the interface, of the interactions with OTA's inventory.
So
no question there.
Exactly. I was thinking
well, I mean, there could be a question, but there doesn't need to be because it's...
No. I don't mind social commentary. I think where the comparison between Get Your Guide and Westeros breaks down is Westeros cannot grow, right? So it's by definition a zero-sum game. And I think that's really the difference between our industry that we're all in versus Game of Thrones, because it's never a zero-sum game. If I look at the industry, 10, 20 years ago, it was much smaller. People didn't do tours. They did like a walking tour with a souvenir stop, and that's the end. Now people plan their trips around experiences, right? And that's so different. And so if anything, the comparison would be much more around, some kind of art movie. Well, people create new things, right? So I was, while you were saying this, I was thinking of which movie would best describe that. I couldn't think of one, but it's really about growing the pie, right? I think that's really the massive opportunity, because there are so many people who, and by the way, this has changed as well. 10 years ago, people would say, why would I take a tour? That is so uncool. Nobody would say that now. Right now, it's almost like if you don't do something interesting, if you only walk around taking selfies, that's not cool, right? You want to go deeper. You want to do something. You want to create a narrative. You want to meet locals. So I think the narrative has really changed. I'm proud that we played a small part in it. You guys are driving a huge narrative of that. So I think that's where as much as we'd love to be Khaleesi, but...
Here's a different movie. Do you know Before Sunrise, Before Sunset?
Is that the rom-com?
No,
that's
com,
midnight
just
something.
rom.
Just rom. Okay.
Just rom. But it's a couple that meet on a train.
Yes, I know that one. Yes. Yeah, but they don't end up being together in the end.
Well, of course, it's unrequited. It's so emotional. But they get off a train in Vienna, and it's sort of a love story, but it's also a story of experience. There's a story of walking and strolling through a city and feeling a place in a way that is non-commercial.
Yeah.
They don't get off the train, open their phones, and book 18 experiences. They get off and they talk and they feel and they look. I'm wondering sort of the larger picture, and then I promise we will get to Get Your Guide's feature launches, but I'm wondering in the larger picture, how you see yourself as an influencer of the nature of what a travel experience means.
Yeah.
You have a responsibility to create a vision that means something for the world and for our travel industry when we're in a state of major flux.
Yeah. Again, I'll respond to your social commentary.
Jesus.
But honestly, I think so you make two great points. First of all, on the movie, that's why it's a movie, right? Because the reality is, for most folks who just stumble into a city without a planning, usually not a good trip. My analogy is
but memorable.
Usually not. Usually if you don't plan and just purely hope for the best in Rome, in Paris, it usually won't work. I give you a different reality TV that I think is the role model, and that's Anthony Bourdain, right? Yeah. So when you think about Anthony, we're all familiar and love Anthony, but he has the greatest trips, the greatest restaurants, the greatest experiences. That's not because he woke up and happened to be in those places, because he had a local guide. Somebody prepared and curated those experiences that he had so he could immerse himself without worrying about how do I immerse myself, right? That is our dream of how the interaction should be, which is you trust somebody, hopefully that's Get Your Guide, to curate the right experiences that are just right for you so you don't have to worry about making it happen, right? So that's kind of how we look at it. And then to your second point about what is our role, maybe a social goal beyond just the commercial side. I think there are maybe two things. One is I do believe that we have a role in reconnecting people with a sense of wonder, right? Because when you travel, when you experience, and by the way, when you learn from a guide, you are in learning mode, right? And that's where we see our mission. You put your hands in somebody local who knows the place and you're willing to learn. And I see a lot of that sense of wonder, that learning mindset, bridging cultures. That's ultimately, I think, I wouldn't say higher purpose, but maybe our small contribution to the world.
So I'm going to do something really controversial here and ask you a question. New categories. You're blowing up or trying to blow up Broadway, West End, opening up a complete new range of categories, which I totally understand. It's big volume, potentially huge volume. Ticketing in there, seating, quite complex to get correct.
Yeah.
But straight away from our world as tour operators, mainly small tour operators, I'm thinking, how does our community see that as an opportunity?
Yeah, a few thoughts here. So first of all, what we're really trying to do here is to answer the question for travelers, what can I do in New York? What can I do in London? Because doing Broadway, doing West End, or seeing a Cirque show in Vegas, that's part of the travel experience, right? We're definitely trying to get you a destination to ask the question, what can I do in a given destination? And as more people flock to that app, hopefully we can create an ecosystem that benefits all the operators providing guided tours, which is more an indirect effect. I think in terms of direct bundling, hard to say. Usually there wouldn't be any direct bundling functionality that I think would be in the immediate roadmap. I think it's a good idea. But I think one of the questions, some folks also asked me at the conference is like, what tours should we create? What experience? And the reality is we are the worst people to say what might work locally. I always get surprised about the things that turn out to be total bestsellers. So for example, in Japan, one of our absolute bestsellers is this Chankanabe experience, which is, a sumo show where you eat the chicken hot pot that is a traditional fare for sumo wrestlers. It's a massive bestseller. If I had to bet 2 years ago, would you put your money on this being a bestseller? I don't know, right? And so usually we're not the right people to say which type of experiences will work, but who knows? Maybe it's the West End afternoon show.
Thought process when that's going is if somebody books a tour or a theatre, it's 2 hours out the day, 4 hours out the day maximum. We know they have another 8-9 hours there. You guys are saying, and I'm sure you've got some data to back it up, that more and more people are booking the experience first before the book.
Absolutely.
So if you're seeing that in data, that screams to me opportunity, because I built several businesses based on that model before people were talking about it.
Yeah.
We got people to book the product first, then I sold them accommodation, then I sold them restaurants, then I sold them transport, and I sold them a whole line of stuff on the back of it. So are you starting to think about the whole customer experience through the day in that city or the day in that destination, rather than just the tour?
Absolutely. So we, two thoughts here. One is I very much believe in your mental model, which is people are changing how they plan their trip, which is starting with experience first, or at least see what's available and then maybe book my hotel around the starting point so I can plan my day. The other thing, though, that I've learned to realize is it's actually very hard to plan the whole itinerary for a customer. One very frequent idea that, comes internally and externally is like, why don't you do this itinerary plan? Just tell people what they should do for the whole day. And we realize people's passions are so diverse. You will have someone who goes to see a Broadway show in the evening and does something completely different from what every other Broadway customer might do. And so all we can do is provide the platform where there's diversity in the types of experiences and let them pick and choose and plan their day. Like this Spotify playlist metaphor, unfortunately, or I don't know, maybe fortunately, doesn't quite work in the industry. Yeah. Where it's just like, okay, just trust us. We plan 3 days for you. Hasn't worked, will not work, and this one I will put my foot down. It's just not the right way. People's passions are just so diverse.
A couple of years ago, I saw you at Skift. It was Klook, Get Your Guide, Viator. And it just really felt like a moment where the three different visions of the future of our industry were on stage. One, everything for everyone. All of the ancillary potential products of eSIMs and everything else that a traveler needs will bring you everything. And you really drove down the idea that we are going to stand for humans, guides, curation. Are you on the right path in our industry?
I think time will tell, like in Game of Thrones. At interface comparison. So there's lots of bets we're placing. And look, we'll see in the marketplace of ideas whether we're right or wrong. But ultimately, we draw inspiration from customer feedback and operator feedback, right? So the reason we're doing this is to also course correct. Look, with curation in 24, we got it wrong, right? We totally got it wrong. We'd opened the floodgates. Everything came flooding in. That was bad call. We course corrected, right? Yeah. So I don't think we woke up with wisdom, but hopefully I think we were born with a growth mindset. And that's kind of the approach we're taking.
You launched a dozen new product features today. What are you most excited about?
It's like saying, who's your favorite child?
So AI reviews, shows, they're all falling out of a window.
Exactly.
Which one are you going to catch?
I think that the general direction around reviews and quality, that's the direction that I think is really exciting. Again, it goes into this whole point of differentiating on value, differentiating on quality. And by the way, these are just individual features, but the direction is, we're talking about moods earlier. That's the same territory, right? Even though it sounds like a completely different picture. By the way, I'm not saying we're launching moods, but the direction...
It sounds good. We love that.
But the direction is, how do I differentiate on value, and how do we incentivize our operators to differentiate on value, right? Because that ultimately creates so much value then for the customers. The reason you book an experience is not because it's cheaper. The cheapest way to book an activity is to not book an activity, right? And so that's the cheapest activity you can book. I think the way to go is going to be differentiating on value. And that's why, AI reviews is one idea variant of that idea space. And that's why I think that direction is the most fruitful one.
I'm going to ask you one question that I've asked one of your compatriots at GetYourGuide earlier today, which is, are reviews good for our industry? Or are they pushing us towards a mediocre middle where we have to play it safe to make sure that we get that 5 stars, to make sure that we game the algorithm, to make sure that we stay at the top of our listings, when in fact we could have been doing something a little bit more risky, expressive, interesting, that could move the experience economy that we're all in a little bit further to the boundaries?
A bit like this podcast.
For example, this. Yeah. Notice there's no way to review Tourpreneur.
We don't want to be in the mushy middle where, we all know review platforms and restaurant reviews were just like, yay, 4.5. I think there's a lot of innovation to be done in that space. Again, not to beat the moods idea, but that's one way around personalization that I think matters. And by the way, when I look at reviews, I filter by reviews. I filter by, nowadays you can filter by couples, right? You read a couple of recent reviews, maybe you can filter by nationalities, filter by age. I think there are ways to filter by the reviews of the people who are more similar to you, right? And that really goes into personalization. I very much believe in that. I think reviews right now is still a really good proxy of quality, and it's a great expected value of what to book. But I think there's going to be a ton of innovation in this entire space to make it, I think the answer is basically more personalized around quality.
So one of the things, and this is personal to me when I travel on my own or with my family, is I've built my own GPTs and travel stuff and all that stuff. Programmed in is the word feeling. So I have a 4.5 minimum on the review programmed in, and the review has to have the word feeling in it. Because I don't want to go on a tour where people are just saying, yeah, it was good. But if someone's talking about how the tour made them feel, I start to get a bit more interested than the tour was great.
Love that idea. Yeah, no, love that idea. And that's why I'm saying strategy for us is, what's the direction we pick? And then there will be tons of great ideas. And usually they don't come from the founders or the executive team, but from the teams on the ground, trying different things, hearing from operator feedback. That's why we love this conference, and that's why so much of our team is here, right? To get those ideas. And this idea could work. Maybe it doesn't work, but the direction is the right one. Yeah. And by the way, I also always read at least a couple of reviews, because if it's just like, loved it, was easy, was simple, versus learned so much versus challenged us. That's exactly that nuance that I think we will get into more. If we sit here again or stand here again in 5 years, we will definitely have walked more in that direction.
I'll still be happy if I'm here in 5 years talking to you.
Absolutely.
At my age, it's good to be here in 5 years.
Yeah. like Game of Thrones. You never know. You never know.
Night is coming. Tao, thank you for having us again here at the event. Thank you for hosting this. And thank you for being a Tourpreneur. Guys,
thank you so much for doing this. I think you're doing a tremendous service, because you're helping those who cannot be here, hopefully get some of the learnings, get some of the nuggets, because we're just in this to spread the knowledge and spread the craft, spread the creativity. We're just a conduit for the creativity of all the local experienced entrepreneurs. So thank you so much for doing what you do.
So you have 300 people in the room who have made it into the room. Incredibly successful operators. What advice do you have to those who are earlier on the journey, starting out, wanting to get to this point?
I think maybe I would think the innovation has to be in new types of experiences that you want to take a bet on, that you think customers will love as much as you love it. And there's usually something authentic. I was talking to, in Japan, someone who was creating new tours. I want voice actors, right? The seiyus in Japan. He was like, we have this. I was like, I love that because, I was a huge anime and manga fan as a child. I love that. I would book that, right? And that is reaching deep into either your personal or the regional or wherever context you're in, that IP. I think that the richness there is something there, or creating like super new funky attractions, right? That's also, but I think the innovation needs to be in new types of experiences that then also enlarge the market. So that's where I would place my bets.
We've got 300 people in here today, and they're all bigger operators. We've had the opportunity to talk to dozens of them, and we've asked them all the same question. What can you pass down from being the experience you've had to grow this business that is a great business? What can you help all of these other operators? Because we're a tight cost community, we're built on community. What can you pass down? And every single one of the operators in here we've spoke to are been more than happy to give the advice and tell the real pain that they went through to try and make the smaller operators not have as much pain.
Oh, for sure.
And it's been a great experience for us to hear, because I went through pain as an operator, but every single operator in here went through pain. Absolutely. So for all our listeners, you're not alone. You're going through the same pain as everyone else has, and these bigger operators are here to help you.
Absolutely, 100%.
My only piece of advice to you is to expand your geography for unique and original tours because they all come from Japan.
That's just my recency bias.
Tao Tao, thank you for being on.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.